Freedom begins the moment you stop sacrificing your soul to maintain the illusion of acceptance. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being too much for everyone else. Always polite, always available, always trying to be who they need you to be. But in the silence of your own mind, when the world quiets down and no one is watching, maybe you've asked yourself, who am I really, beneath all the pleasing? Erich Fromm once said that most people live in response to what others expect of them, not in alignment with who they truly are. And maybe you feel that, not as an idea but as a weight in your chest, a tiredness in your bones, a quiet resentment that creeps in after yet another moment where you didn't say what you really felt, didn't do what you truly wanted, didn't choose yourself. Again, you've smiled when you wanted to scream. You've said yes when every part of your body was screaming no, and you've been praised for it. Such a good person, they say, so kind, so generous, so easy to love. But at what cost? The truth is, the desire to be accepted often hides a deeper fear, the fear of being excluded, abandoned, rejected. And that fear? It doesn't just live in your thoughts. It shapes your nervous system. It distorts your energy. It programs your emotional body to contort itself into whatever version of you feels safest to others, even if that version silences your soul. There's a kind of emotional slavery that looks like love, a kind of self-betrayal that wears the mask of compassion. And over time, this silent sacrifice becomes your norm. You forget what it feels like to act from truth instead of tension, from desire instead of duty. This video is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about becoming whole. Because living truthfully isn't about rejecting people. It's about refusing to reject yourself. When you stop caring in the way you've been conditioned to, when you release the need to be seen as good, worthy, or acceptable, something shifts. Your energy realigns. Your essence starts to breathe again. You begin to feel not just relief, but reverence for who you are beneath the performance. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to be easy to be worthy. And you certainly don't need to betray yourself to be accepted. You just need to remember, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to live as you are, even if it means disappointing those who only love the version of you that agrees, obeys, and smiles on cue. This is not rebellion, it's reclamation. This is not selfishness, it's soul retrieval. Stop caring, not because nothing matters, but because your essence does. There is a certain kind of kindness that slowly erodes your soul. It looks warm on the outside, soft, accommodating, endlessly giving. But inside, it's built on fear. Fear of not being needed, fear of being forgotten, fear that if you're not useful, if you're not pleasing, you'll be left behind. This isn't generosity, it's survival. The nice person who never says no, the empathetic one who carries everyone's burdens but their own, the one who smiles while shrinking inside. That person isn't living from love. They're living from a wound. A childhood wound, perhaps, of not being truly seen unless they were easy, of only being valued when they were convenient, of associating safety with self-erasure. And over time, this becomes a role so deeply rehearsed it feels like a personality. But it's not who you are. It's who you had to become. Gabor Mate speaks of this as a hidden addiction. The addiction to being needed, to being approved, to being the caretaker. And like any addiction, it begins as a strategy to survive, and ends as a pattern that depletes your life force. Because to constantly please others, you must constantly abandon yourself. This form of emotional compliance demands immense energy. You monitor your tone, your words, your expressions. You predict other people's reactions and adjust yourself accordingly. And that tension? that continuous contraction of your true self? It drains your nervous system, your joy, your aliveness. What you call being nice might just be your trauma wearing a smile. It's not that you shouldn't be kind. True kindness is sacred, but true kindness flows from wholeness, not fear. From fullness, not depletion. From choice, not compulsion. And if your kindness is costing you your authenticity, your vitality, and your inner peace, then maybe it's not kindness anymore. Maybe it's a quiet scream that no one's hearing, but you can hear it. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop performing the role and start listening to the voice behind the smile. There's a strange emptiness that grows when you live your life to be accepted. A hollow echo in the heart that says, something is missing. And no matter how much validation you receive, no matter how many likes, nods, or compliments you collect, that echo doesn't quiet down, because it's not praise you're starving for. It's permission to be yourself. But here lies the paradox. The moment you start needing acceptance, you begin to abandon the frequency of your truth. Your energy shifts, your body tightens. You start shaping your words, your emotions, even your dreams to fit the image of what's desirable. And slowly, you stop living as yourself and begin performing a version of you that you hope will be loved. This is not connection, this is camouflage. When you need to be seen as good, evolved, or spiritually awake, you begin to create a false field around you, a frequency that doesn't reflect your soul, but your fear. And energy doesn't lie. The universe doesn't respond to the mask you wear. It responds to the vibration you emit. That's why many people who do everything right still feel lost. Why those who visualize, manifest, and repeat affirmations often feel like something's still off. It's because what they say they want isn't aligned with what they feel at the core. They're not vibrating desire. They're vibrating fear. Fear of not being chosen, fear of not being enough. And fear is magnetic. It draws in more of itself. This is why living from your truth is not just a spiritual act. It's a vibrational shift. It's choosing honesty over harmony. It's being willing to be misunderstood so you can stop misunderstanding yourself. It's giving up the comfort of fitting in for the power of finally belonging to your own soul. Acceptance that comes at the cost of authenticity is not acceptance, it's spiritual exile. So if you find yourself constantly trying to prove your worth, to perform your wisdom, to present your light while hiding your shadow, pause, breathe, and remember, the more you chase validation, the more you step away from the home that has always been inside you. You don't have to be who they want. You only have to remember who you are. Some wounds don't bleed. They repeat. Quietly. Invisibly. In how you walk into a room. In how you anticipate being judged before anyone speaks. In how your body tenses when someone raises their voice. In how your heart races at the thought of being truly seen. This is how trauma lingers, not just in memories, but in energy. Every moment you were criticized, excluded, or humiliated carved an imprint. And that imprint didn't just leave a scar in your mind. It shaped your field. It taught your nervous system what to expect, what to fear, what to repeat. That's the silent architecture of trauma. It builds a world around your wound and then convinces you it's the only world you'll ever know. So you start attracting not what you deserve, but what your pain expects. People who echo your first heartbreak, situations that mirror your childhood fears, circumstances that reflect the beliefs you never consciously chose, but carry like a second skin. Not because you want to suffer, but because the wounded parts of you crave familiarity more than freedom. Trauma becomes a filter, not just of memory, but of perception. You see the world not as it is, but through the lens of what hurt you. And in that lens, rejection looks inevitable. Criticism looks personal. Love looks conditional. So you brace, you prepare, you adapt. And that adaptation becomes your vibration. This is why healing isn't about just thinking positive or changing your mindset. It's about releasing the energetic residue of the past, about learning to feel safe in frequencies that your body has learned to fear, like joy, rest, or even being loved without needing to perform. Because until that happens, the pain that was done to you will keep being done through you, unconsciously, repetitively. But here's what you need to remember. You are not your imprint. You are not your wound. You are not the vibration your trauma taught you to carry. You are the awareness that can witness it, the presence that can unlearn it, the field that can be rewired, gently, patiently, truthfully. Not through force, but through remembering that safety is not submission, it's alignment. And you get to decide what your energy agrees to vibrate from now on. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you sense that someone wants something from you and your body tenses, not out of fear of harm, but fear of disappointing. That small shift, that subtle internal contraction, is the birth of self-abandonment. And most of us have lived in that contraction for so long, we mistake it for kindness, for empathy, for love. But love that costs your truth is not love. It's a transaction of survival. To break this cycle, you don't need to become cruel. You don't need to harden. You only need to develop one sacred muscle, the willingness to disappoint. Yes, disappoint. Not recklessly, not reactively, but consciously. Because the moment you choose to disappoint someone else in order to stay loyal to your inner signal, that's the moment you reclaim your vibration. This is what we can call vibrational inversion. It's when you invert the old pattern, the one where you said yes out of fear, the one where your body betrayed itself to avoid conflict, and you choose instead to stay aligned with your own resonance, even if that means being misunderstood. At the neurological level, your brain has been wired to associate safety with approval, especially if, in your early years, love was inconsistent or conditional. Your nervous system learned that being good, being agreeable, was the safest path, and it protected you. It did its job. But now, that wiring has become a cage, and you are not a child anymore. You can hold the discomfort of disapproval. You can breathe through the anxiety of letting someone down. You can survive the silence after you speak your truth, and discover to your surprise that your soul feels lighter. This is the power of refusal. Strategic, intentional, honest refusal, not rejection of the other, but a deep yes to your own being. To heal is not to always say yes. To heal is to recognize that not every invitation is sacred, not every expectation is yours to meet, and not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Because when you stop needing to be understood, you start vibrating what is undeniable. Presence, clarity, truth. The people who matter will feel it. The rest were never listening, only projecting. So yes, it takes courage to disappoint, but it takes even more courage to continue living a lie for the comfort of others. And your energy? It's ready for the truth. There's a deep confusion that has been woven into many sensitive souls, the belief that love must cost you something sacred, that to be worthy you must first bleed, that to be spiritual you must constantly suppress your truth for the sake of harmony. It's a beautiful illusion, and a dangerous one, because when you equate love with sacrifice, you begin to trade authenticity for approval. You become the one who says yes when the heart whispers no. You become the one who forgives without processing, who smiles through the ache, who stays quiet to keep the peace. Not because it feels right, but because you've been told that being good means being invisible. But this isn't goodness, it's spiritual exhaustion. True spirituality does not ask you to betray yourself in the name of compassion. It does not demand your silence, your compliance, or your performance. It asks for presence, for truth, for alignment between what you feel and what you express. And if your spiritual practice turns you into someone who constantly doubts themselves, who erases their needs, who lives in fear of disappointing others, then it's not a path to enlightenment. It's a loop of internalized shame, dressed up as virtue. Nietzsche warned us about this. He spoke of the morality of the herd, a value system that teaches obedience as virtue, submission as nobility, and suffering as proof of worth. And while it may keep society orderly, it doesn't keep the soul alive. Because the soul doesn't want to be obedient. It wants to be real. The soul doesn't want to be liked by everyone. It wants to be seen by the few who can meet it in its rawness. And the soul doesn't seek love that demands its silence. It seeks love that can hold its wildness without fear. So if you've been seeking love by shrinking yourself, by hiding your shadows, by sacrificing your essence, by performing your light, you haven't failed. You've simply been taught to survive, to adapt, to protect the child within you who once believed that love must be earned through suffering. But that child can rest now. Because love, real love, begins where self-erasure ends, and the most spiritual thing you can do, perhaps the most revolutionary, is to stop sacrificing yourself in the name of love and start honoring the love that already lives in you, unconditionally, without a price, without performance, without pain. It doesn't always look obvious. People who live to please often carry a smile. They're reliable, attentive, thoughtful. They rarely cause conflict. They're praised for how much they give, how easy they are to be around. But under the surface, there's a quiet ache. The ache of someone who has forgotten how it feels to live for themselves. Sometimes it shows up as exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep fixes, but the kind that lingers even after rest. A heaviness that follows you after every conversation, every interaction where you twisted yourself into a more palatable version. You might find yourself explaining things that need no explanation, apologizing for simply taking up space, overthinking your words days after a conversation, not because you said something wrong, but because you're afraid someone might have taken it the wrong way. You avoid conflict, not because you're at peace, but because you fear being seen as difficult, because deep down you've equated disagreement with danger, a relic from relationships where love was withdrawn the moment you stopped complying. And your body remembers. Your body is always on, always alert, watching, monitoring, scanning for signs of disapproval. Your shoulders tense, your chest tightens, your breath shortens. Hyper-attunement becomes your default state, not out of presence, but as a trauma response. This is how living to please begins to replace living to exist. You become a character in your own life, editing yourself constantly, afraid of being too much or not enough. And slowly, the line between who you are and who you perform becomes harder to trace. But even if you've lived this way for years, there's something inside you that still knows. A quiet voice, a gentle pulse, a subtle resistance every time you betray yourself to keep the peace. That resistance is not a flaw. It's your truth trying to breathe. And the more you ignore it, the louder the fatigue becomes. Not just physical, but spiritual. Because no soul can thrive in a life that was built to be acceptable, but not authentic. So if you feel drained, overly accommodating, if you fear being seen without your roles, it's not weakness. It's a sign you've lived too long away from yourself. And perhaps you're not tired of life. You're tired of the version of you that life never asked for, but that you became to survive. Imagine yourself as a house, a vast, beautiful house with 1,000 windows. And every time someone enters, they open a window. They rearrange the furniture. They move a picture frame. They paint a wall. Just a little. Just enough. Until the house becomes more comfortable for them. And at first, you don't notice. You're just grateful they came. You want them to stay. So you let them change a few things. It seems harmless. Maybe even kind. But over time, the house stops feeling like yours. The light that used to pour in from your favorite corner now hits someone else's chosen color. The room that once held your dreams is now filled with their expectations. And when you walk through the halls, you begin to feel like a guest in your own home. This is what happens when you live too long for others. When you let every opinion, every expectation, every glance of disapproval redecorate your inner world. When you confuse being loved with being molded. And slowly, you forget the original shape of your soul. But there comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes brought on by a breaking, when you realize that you no longer recognize yourself, that the life you've built is beautiful, but not yours. And in that moment, something ancient awakens, not anger, not rebellion, but a soft, sacred knowing, I need to come home to myself. So you begin closing the windows, not out of bitterness, but for restoration. You begin walking through each room, remembering, feeling, grieving. You move the furniture back, you repaint the walls. You sit in the silence and ask, is this mine? Or was this chosen for me? And slowly the house starts to breathe again. Not for others, but for you. This metaphor is not about isolation. It's about sovereignty. It's about the deep, tender act of reclaiming the shape of your soul before it was rearranged by a world that never asked who you truly are. Because the truth is, no one can live your life for you. No one else hears the whispers your soul came to listen to. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop opening all the windows. Just for a while. Just long enough to remember what the light looks like when it's yours. Stop caring, start living is not a call to indifference. It's not a rebellion against connection or love. It's a quiet revolution, a turning inward, a remembering. It means no longer handing your soul to the world in exchange for acceptance. It means no longer shaping your truth to fit into spaces that cannot hold your depth. It means no longer asking for permission to exist as you are, because there comes a time, and maybe that time is now, when the cost of pretending becomes heavier than the risk of being seen, when the performance wears thin, when the roles you've played begin to feel like chains, when the light within you begins to flicker not out of despair, but as a signal, a calling to return, to re-inhabit, to live. And living in its rawest form begins with honesty. The kind of honesty that doesn't need to be loud. The kind that lives in your posture, in your breath, in the way your eyes stop scanning for approval and start resting in presence. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are not here to be easy. You are not here to keep the peace at the cost of your inner storm. You are here to remember your frequency, to honor it, to vibrate it without shame, even if it disturbs those who only know you through your compliance. You are not broken for needing space. You are not wrong for saying no. You are not selfish for choosing yourself after years of being chosen last by your own heart. This isn't the end of your kindness. It's the beginning of your wholeness. So if the world feels too loud, too demanding, if the masks no longer fit and the mirrors no longer reflect anything true, then maybe this is the moment to stop caring the way you used to, and to start living in a way that feels like home. Because at the center of it all, behind the expectations, the fear, the exhaustion, there is still something untouched, something sacred, something waiting. And that something is you. If this message stirred something in you, if it touched a place you've been trying to silence or gave language to a feeling you haven't yet been able to name, don't rush to change. Just stay. Stay with the feeling. Stay with the truth it awakened. Let this video be a mirror, not a map. You don't need more steps. You need more space. Space to feel what you feel without judgment. Space to ask the questions that don't have immediate answers. Space to simply be, without performing, fixing, or pleasing. And if you feel like you're the only one questioning everything, you're not. There's a quiet tribe of souls scattered across the world who are also unlearning the noise, who are also remembering the sacred weight of their own truth. You're not alone in this. You never were. If this resonated, allow it to echo. Reflect on it. Share it with someone who might need this same permission to stop caring in the old ways and start living in a new one. And before you go, ask yourself, not with your mind, but with your whole being, who would I become if I stopped needing to be anyone else? Sit with that. Because that version of you, they're already waiting, just beneath the surface,